This video has kindly been sponsored by SPITCH. SPITCH is a fantasy football app where you can test your management skills against others and win real prizes. Create a lineup within the budget every match day and score points powered by Opta Stats. During the creation of your lineup, make various tactical decisions like picking your captain and choosing your formation. Managers then with the most points enter the win zone and win real prizes. It's completely free to download and there's some free tournaments to enter as well, so give it a try using the link in the description box below. Get registered and start building your perfect 11 for the upcoming match day. Hey guys, and welcome back to FPL TV. For the very last time this season, let's first take a look back at how things went in Gameweek 37, before then looking ahead to the final game week of the campaign. The initial plan last week was to bring in Tottenham's budget defender Ryan Sessegnon, but sadly my transfer plans were out of the window once again after Mo Salah picked up an injury in the FA Cup final. With Mo Salah injured, Kevin De Bruyne looked to be the obvious replacement, with the Belgian fresh off the back of scoring 4 goals against Wolves. It was the first time of me owning De Bruyne this season, and frustratingly his debut blank in my side set the precedent for the rest of my team. Initially, I also had the armband on Mo Salah, so with him out, I opted to give it to Coutinho, simply as he was one of the only double game week players I had, and I wasn't quite fancying that early kickoff for Spurs. This too ended up in disaster, with Coutinho now failing to return a single goal or assist in 10 game weeks. Transferring in Coutinho in game week 35, in place of James Maddison, has ended up costing me over 20 points, an incredible swing, and that has played a big part in my team's downfall over the past few weeks. I couldn't have too much regret in captaining Coutinho last week however, because my entire midfield blanked last week anyway, and the only other captaincy consideration up front, Harry Kane, got the mediocre 7 points against Burnley, so regardless of which attacker I captained in my side last week, it would never have saved me from the disaster that it was. Meanwhile, other popular captaincy options, most notably Richarlison, who somehow had over 100% effective ownership, ended up punishing in the worst way possible, bagging 2 goals and an assist in his double and putting my team to the sword. In Game Week 37, a lot of responsibility was put on the Wolves defence from me last week, with the double up of Sarr and Cody being a big differential for me at home to Norwich, a Norwich side that had failed to score in all 4 of their previous games. Well, this too couldn't have gone any worse, with Jose Sarr getting rotated for this Norwich fixture, and Cody getting subbed off at half-time for a 1-pointer. Disaster. With Jose Sarr missing out completely, in came Aaron Ramsdale off my bench, and what a nightmare option he's been since wildcarding him in for Game Week 26. Arsenal have kept 1 clean sheet in 15 games since owning him, whilst Jose Sarr has only managed 2. That's 3 clean sheets in 30 games between the pair, just so poor. To add salt to the wounds of an already extremely painful game week, with Alexander-Arnold missing out completely last week, I once again had to resort to my bench, and my first sub was a Newcastle defender that kept a surprise clean sheet against Arsenal, so a good thing, right? How's about no? Fabian Schär went off injured after 50 minutes in that Newcastle victory, missing out on that clean sheet with a 1-pointer. When it rains, it pours. There were some returns in my defence, with both Matip and Marcos Alonso delivering once again, 2 of the more successful transfer moves I've made this season. Particularly Matip, who returned in every game week since buying him. Exceptional value. 20 points from the defensive pair was a fantastic return, no doubt, with both of them getting on the score sheet. It was just so hard to celebrate their points really, with the game week in general being such a nightmare elsewhere. So for Game Week 37, the penultimate game week of the season, sadly almost everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. It is pretty ironic, because prior to these last 2 game weeks, I felt one of the characteristics of my FPL season was that despite not having many great game weeks, I almost managed to avoid having any disaster weeks throughout the season. It felt like an unexciting but very consistent, solid season that took me to 25k with 3 game weeks to go. However, the disaster game weeks have sadly all come right at the end, right at the final hurdle. And from 25k 2 game weeks ago, with a chance of a personal best finish in FPL, I've now dropped all the way down to 68k, a really tough collapse to take. In 2 short game weeks, I've gone from a very pleasing season to one of mediocrity, and that definitely stings after a long 35 game week graft. On a personal level, there are still some positives to take from this season, especially considering even this rank of 68k is at least much better than my previous 2 efforts. In the last 2 seasons, I finished 900k and 250k, really below par, so there's no doubting this season, despite ending terribly, was still a big improvement on those at least, so that's progress. I've never once considered myself a top FPL player, But overall, I am happy with how I've played this season. I just think perhaps because there's been so many double game weeks to end this season, maybe my less aggressive playstyle hasn't really helped me here. Game week 37 was also another huge game week for those that still had the free hit in hand, and with me having no chips left, it was always going to be an uphill battle. It certainly hurts a lot, but I'll still look back at this season much more positively than the previous two, and it was nice to at least be fighting amongst the higher ranks for a change, with a season high of 17k in game week 28. Let's move on to the last game week of the season now, and look at some potential transfer plans as well as my final team lineup. Now, before discussing transfers, I want to stress that no moves have been made yet, and it's likely I'll wait until close to the deadline to make any transfers, especially considering all the games will kick off at the same time this weekend, and who knows, perhaps we'll get some hints about the starting lineups before the deadline hits, which could of course shape my transfer plans. There's also been a few rumours circulating regarding Harry Kane's fitness for this Norwich fixture, with him apparently falling ill, so that's one I definitely have to keep an eye on, as he was of course a big part of my 38 plans, with him a very strong captaincy shout. Overall, the team looks fairly solid for this week, and although I wasn't feeling too confident about my Arsenal players for this Everton fixture, with the Toffees having now secured their place in the Premier League for next season, I think that has made this Everton game a bit better than it looked before. Arsenal still have to win, whilst Everton can now perhaps relax a bit, so hopefully that makes Saka a decent option this week. As for Marcos Alonso, I do worry about his starting place, with potential rotation looming for Chelsea. But considering it's Alonso's last ever home game for the club, I'm hoping Tuchel may feel sentimental here. In FPL terms, it's simply too good of a fixture for me to not start Alonso, so I'll just have to rely on Broja on my bench should he miss out. As for my potential transfer plans, it's the disappointing Coutinho away to Man City this week who's set to make way. Having made the move of Mo Salah to Kevin De Bruyne in 37, of course that has at least freed up a bit of cash to use for this final game week, and with 1.1 million now available in the bank to spend, that's more than enough to upgrade Coutinho to Mason Mount with a free transfer. This isn't my guaranteed move, but it is, I'd say, the most obvious one, and it's a transfer I had been eyeing up even a few game weeks back for this final week. With Mason Mount notably getting rested in their previous league fixture as well, that almost guarantees him of a start at home to Watford here, and therefore makes the move even more appealing. Mason Mount has developed a bit of a history this season of not delivering consistent FPL returns, but instead going quiet for a while and then producing a big double-digit haul in the easier fixtures. He's produced 6 double-digit returns this season against the likes of Leeds, Southampton, Norwich, and including his upcoming opponents Watford. With just one game week to go, of course I'm looking for a transfer that could be explosive for just the one game week, and Mount could tick that box. The Chelsea midfielder is certainly my preferred transfer as things stand, but there's 2 reasons that I'd say he's not guaranteed to come in. The first is that with me now being ranked at 68,000, I've now got nothing really to lose here, so perhaps taking a punt on a player who's a bigger differential could be an option, instead of Mount, who will certainly be a popular transfer in. The only other concern here is that Thomas Tuchel has said he could heavily rotate this Chelsea side, and therefore even though Mount looks good to start, in general it will likely be a much weaker Chelsea 11. In terms of differentials, I have considered the likes of Jota, Foden or Mahrez in place of Mount here, particularly with Jota facing his old club, but I think Mount is still my preferred option considering he looks more guaranteed to start. With Fabian Schär now being an injury concern for me, it's likely I'll be taking a -4 hit for the final game week. I've talked up Ryan Sessegnon a lot in the past few weeks, and because I'm looking for players who have haul potential, he's probably worth the punt for a -4, with Connor Cody set to make way. Norwich are the league's lowest scorers by far this season, with just 23 goals scored, so a very good chance of a clean sheet here for Spurs. Although a clean sheet alone wouldn't do much for me on a -4, it's basically the hope that Sessegnon gets a clean sheet and also an attacking return in addition that I'm taking the risk for. In just the last 2 game weeks, he's created 5 big chances, by far the most of any defender. So if he can produce an assist here, in addition to that clean sheet, that's likely a double-digit haul and that would make the hit all the worthwhile. And at this point it does seem a risk worth taking. So, with those 2 transfers currently the moves I'm looking at, let's see how the side would then line up. For the captaincy in the final game week, I'll be straight up and say this one is undecided for me at the moment. If I was still around the 25k mark and still close to my personal best finish, I have no doubts I'd captain Son Heung-min here, who I believe to be the best captain shout for this game week. He's facing Norwich in a crucial fixture whilst also chasing the golden boot, so it does feel a pretty straightforward decision. However, there's no question that Son Heung-min will very likely be the most popular captain choice this week, and therefore perhaps he's not the best option for me if I do want to take the risk and seriously climb back up the ranks again. It's a bit like what I said earlier about the Mason Mount transfer. Now that I'm ranked at 68k, it makes no odds to me whether I finish there or 90,000 for example. So opting for a differential captain would be risky, but would also be the opportunity to jump as far up the ranks as possible. And that's why the likes of Kane, KDB, Trent and Mount come into consideration for the final day. The captaincy does sit with Son for now, and that may still hopefully be enough to reach a top 50k finish. But I'll be weighing up the other differential options up until the deadline. So that's everything regarding my team heading into the final game week of the season. Nothing is locked in yet, and I'll wait until the final moments to lock in my transfers, just in case there is any surprise team leaks and information. Sessegnon and Mount for a -4 is my likely transfer route, but anything can happen between now and the deadline. As per usual, if you want to see the final team, transfers and captaincy, you can do so on the FPL TV Twitter page shortly before the deadline hits. Lastly, I just want to give a very quick thank you to every single one of you watching this video, and to those of you who have followed my season and supported the channel this year. I really do appreciate it so much. Thanks to you all for sticking with me, even despite this disappointing finish to the season. Good luck to you all for the final game week, and have a great recharge through the summer. FPL responsibly, and I'll catch you all very soon.